How's it going, everybody? I'm your host, the Carolina Collector. Before I begin, like always, I want to say thank you to my viewers, my supporters, friends, family, neighbors, eBay customers. All of you are amazing. I really appreciate the support. If you like what you see and you enjoy the content, do me a huge favor, subscribe to the channel as this channel continues to grow little by little by little each and every single day, and that's all because of you. So thank you very much for that. Don't forget to smash that like button, comment in the comment section below, and of course, hit the bell to receive notifications. I do have an eBay store called the Carolina Collector 001. The link is in every description box and video that I upload here on YouTube. I'm selling loose sports cards, various other items from time to time. So thank you for your continued support. With all that being said, the last couple of YouTube shorts that I uploaded, I tried to upload another one last night and it just wasn't going anywhere, so I decided to delete it. Because the one previous to that, where I was talking about me listing new sports cards over at my eBay store, it got over 100 views, so I'm like, let me delete the second one. It's kind of superfluous. Why bother? So I just wanted to get into some of the frustrations about what it's like to be an LLC selling sports cards and the things that I sell on eBay. The big one is United States Postal Service. They are the biggest hindrance in all of this, because if you watch that playlist that I have here on the channel, the incompetence of USPS, or whatever it's called, you're going to see cases of check washing, check theft, lost mail, antiquated machinery, and all this kind of stuff. Mailmen or postal workers getting robbed at gunpoint in some cases. You're kind of forced to deal with a middleman, and it can make or break, everything that you set yourself up for. And in my case, the biggest thing I've been dealing with is lost mail. Now it's began to subside just a little bit, because I had 2 open cases for lost cards, and I'm going to assume it's gone past that date, and I haven't seen any money taken out of my eBay account or my bank account. So I'm going to assume that these cards were actually delivered by their customers, or to their customers, I should say, excuse me. But the post office is the biggest hindrance. I ordered for 200 card sleeves, top loaders to be specific. And I know my customers do not like these. Unless I send out relics, or if I sell relics, I'll send them out using Card Saver ones, because they're very forgiving. But, there's always a chance that if I sell a relic, like I'm probably going to list both of these sooner than later. That's a Salvador Perez relic and a Zach Geloff rookie relic from Topps. And they work well with Card Saver ones. I know they have very specific top loaders just for those type of cards, but for right now, that's what I have. But unfortunately, dealing with the post office, you have to deal with all this random nonsense that goes on with them. Again, theft. They're just, underpaid and overworked. The machinery's antiquated. There's all this stuff that I deal with as an eBay seller. And if the post office doesn't deliver my orders to my customers, it costs me money. Not only am I out of card, I also have to, and eBay, unfortunately, is not on the seller side when it comes to this. They will enforce refunds. They will aggressively refund anyone that says they didn't receive their order. And regardless of all my attempts to kind of quell this issue, there's that 1 or 2 that slip through the cracks, which is why I've implemented, adding these labels and adding these labels, and using methods like tamper-proof stickers on my orders and all sorts of things to make sure there's no bullshit going on with my orders. And I have pretty good customers. I've only had a handful of issues with people trying to get over. But so far, everybody who's been ordering my cards have been really cool customers. I've had to replace a couple cards, unfortunately. One of them recently, I believe, was a Jackson Holiday Gold 2025 Future Stars from Flagship. So the customer messaged me and showed me I wasn't paying attention and put a staple right through the card. When I seal my cards, I use these plastic not plastic holders, excuse me, cardboard holders that I encase in plastic sleeves. That's what I meant to say. Forgive me, it's still early in the morning yet. So And I had some PC Jackson holidays, and I sent a photo of these cards, and I told the customer these are about approximately the same value as that card. I'm sorry, that's on me. I did that. That's my fault. Pick one of these, I'll send it to you free of charge, and that's what I did. Like that's good business, because this customer may come back one day and buy stuff if they haven't done so already. But it hurts when I'm not able to get card supplies on time. Now today, after I uploaded this particular YouTube short, I finally got a text message that these 200 top loaders are now en route to my home and should be delivered sometime today. It's about time. I have a business model that I've been using, and I'm still new to all of this. I've only been doing this, 14 to 15 months, and I don't have a degree in sales. Listen, I did a 5-year apprenticeship in plumbing, in the union back in New York. I'm not going to get into the whole spiel. If you've been watching my channel, you know my story already. Don't pay attention to talking heads out there. You come to the source. So I did a 5-year apprenticeship in New York and all that stuff for trade school for plumbing and what have you, and put in a 13-year career. And with all of this now, with the sports card stuff, ever since I lost my career due to that wonderful event that took place in anti-Semitic New York, where 2 buildings that look alike were hit by flying objects filled with anti-Semitic people and innocent victims. You should be able to deduce what I mean by now. And I've had to teach myself how to do all this stuff. I mean, I'm a collector first and foremost. I never thought, it never even dawned on me to become an eBay seller. I mean, I told my dad about this before he passed away this year, that this was something that I wanted to do to keep myself busy, because I don't want to be one of these remote control pushing, unhealthy fat fucks that eat Burger King and McDonald's all day and laying about doing nothing. I'm sorry, I got to put my brain to use. I just don't want to rot away. And I've been doing this now for 15 months, and I tell you what, I'm not making $1 million doing this. I make a handful of dollars to supplement my current income, and it's been helpful. It pays for the cell phone bill. I mean, it doesn't pay the rent, but it does pay for food, it does pay for gas, and it pays for the smaller bills, And so far it's been okay, but then it gets to a point where, like, if I don't have certain things in hand to list these cards on eBay, I'm going to get into trouble. And the problem is, I don't want to be stuck with what's called overhead. In other words, I don't want too much of anything. The business model that I follow, or at least what I've been using so far, is I'll order like 100 to 200 like envelopes. I still have a couple unopened packs here. So if I can get them in bulk for discounted prices, I'll order 100, I'll order 200. If I get bulk orders, I tend to use bubblers and PSA style boxes like these. I think eBay also utilizes these type of boxes or something very similar to that. My eBay customers will know that. Obviously, tamper-proof labels, sleeves, cardboard sleeves, all that kind of stuff. But I don't want to have too much of anything, because if I'm not moving baseball cards or anything else I'm selling, I'm going to be stuck with this stuff, and that'll be money spent that it's not going anywhere. So I have to be very careful. So I have to pick and choose how much of anything that I buy. Obviously, the main course is having to have things to sell. So I've had multiple packs and boxes that I've opened up here on the channel that I've been selling over time. I mean, yeah, there's been a couple slabs I was kind of like, I really didn't want to sell them, but weighing the odds, versus their statistics, performance, supply, demand. The one big one was the Shohei Ohtani red out of 5. I wrestled, with that particular card. I obviously, because of other resources that I'm expecting any day now, I didn't have to sell that card, thank God, because that's one of my favorite cards in my collection. It's one of the first big cards I owned since I got back into this, and I really didn't want to part with it. But when outside forces get in the way of my goals that I've set for myself to do this sort of thing, it really is a hindrance, and it's frustrating. I have a lot of loyal customers. I believe at this point I've sold over 2,000 items. And I have 132 people following me on eBay, and it'd be a big help if you're sports card collectors If you want to follow me on eBay, you can do that as well, because I just dumped probably like 30 or 40 cards last night, just to keep up. Because I do have customers that order in bulk, whether they buy off of me and then resell themselves. Hey, man, if you can make money off of me, that's fine, I mean, that's just how capitalism works. If I can be a supplier to one or two of you out there, hey, so be it, man. God bless you. Have had it. And that kind of makes me proud, and it says a lot that at least, I can provide that kind of thing. But, if you're just a regular schmo, a regular, average Joe like myself, and you're a collector, for me, that's great. Again, I'm not out to make $1 million. If I make whatever I make. It was something like Sports Card Radio said yesterday. I was watching their live stream. I kind of threw my hat into the fray just a little bit, because I was busy listing cards last night. They're like, you have to have a certain mindset, a drive, and ambition as well. And if you don't have those things, you're not going to succeed, And I've been pushing and pushing and pushing. And on top of all of that, I've been dealing with all the personal stuff, again, with the fallout of the death of my dad. A lot of things have been dropped into my lap, and then I had to deal with the bullshit of my ex-girlfriend and what she did to me, dragging me into a fucking court scenario where I was accused of all sorts of stuff that never happened, and I was acquitted. Now I got to deal with assholes out there doxing me and putting out, what they call misinformation, where I was acquitted of all charges. And it's not the first time that this has happened, where I've had people try to criminalize me or demonize me, and every time they've tried, I've succeeded in defending myself, because I'm not a criminal. And that pisses people off out there, because there are those that are out there that want to watch people rise to the top and then fall. It's called worthless entertainment. Mindless entertainment. That's exactly what it is. And, to this day, with everything that I've been put through, I'm still here, I'm still going, and I'm still talking, and I'm still thinking. But now I've taken a step up, because now I'm running my own little business out of my home. That changes the game quite a bit, especially legally. So with all that being said, I have to try to keep up with all of this. And if I have a demand by my customers to provide said products, then, if I don't get the things I need in time, that could really cost me dearly as far as income is concerned. And again, I'm not out to make $1 million. I make what I make, but it's just, it just hurts when, I put in an order for something and it doesn't arrive in the time frame that I would expect it to, and then it gets delayed another day and another day and another day. And that screws up my routine throughout the day. I have a personal life as well. There are days like today. I'm going to list a couple more cards today. I got those 2 relics, and I got a few top loaders I was able to switch around that I'm going to try to get up today at my eBay store, so at least I can tell myself, hey, man, I tried. But until these new top loaders come, there's nothing I can do, and I know nobody wants these. So, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's making my customers happy, and at the same time, I'm having to bite the bullet on a lot of stuff, because, I'm having to depend on a middleman to get my shit here on time. And the problem is, where I live in my immediate area, you can't really get top loaders or penny sleeves or anything like that. I've gone to many Targets and many Walmarts around here, and they're almost always sold out. And I'm not going to buy junk for my customers. I want to try to get the best I can. Obviously, I want to get supplies at discount if I buy them in bulk. I've been buying everything roughly 200 at a time. But, unfortunately, in this hobby, collectors have made it clear, and my customers, and I also watch other content creators, who are eBay sellers and, LCSs, or work out of their homes like I do. It's just the simple fact of the matter is, sports card collectors want what they want. They want top loaders. They want penny sleeves. What am I going to do? So I have to bite the bullet on that. And I bought all of these. And I still have a box of 200 card saver ones in my bedroom. And most of my PC are all in card saver ones, because I hope to submit them for grading somewhere down the road. It's just with all the distractions and everything. And that's another thing, too, running your business out of home, is that, when you have a personal life or a family or what have you, you're going to be bombarded from left and right, because your brain is telling you one thing, but the world around you is trying to nudge you into another direction. And it can get very, very, very stressful, intense, and, especially now, coming down the road, all of I have to take care of business next month with my family. Unfortunately, I have that pressure on me. My family are depending on me to be with them, when all of this transpires up north, and they're my family. What am I going to do? Spit on my family? I'm not like some other people that are out there that have spit in my face and stabbed me in the back. I'm a dedicated guy. Loyalty to me is everything. When you're loyal, to me, man, I'll go to the gusto for you. But if you're going to stab me in the back, you might as well just be dead at that point. And I mean metaphorically. I'm not saying for real. In my Rolodex of a brain, I rip out your name. I rip out that little page with your name and info on it, and I throw it in the trash, and it's like you never existed. You're in the graveyard to me, as far as I'm concerned, metaphorically. But yeah, you got to deal with the post office. You got to deal with shipping delays. Sometimes things will come damaged. I've had instances where, like, which I really I felt like it wasn't worth talking about it on camera. Like, sometimes I'll get, the bubblers like I order for, and they'll come damaged. Sometimes there'll be a big shipping, sometimes postal men or UPS, whatever, they just toss boxes down and you'll see dents in your boxes. That's happened with Transformers toys of mine, for example. Even my Nike Air Jordan 2025s that I ordered, excuse me, I was about to say 2016s. My Nike Air Jordan White Cement 2025s that I ordered, the box had a dent on it. I mean, I'm not a box collector, so it doesn't really matter because I wear my shoes, but it just sucks to see that. So you'll get damaged boxes and, and then you got your personal life that gets in the way as well, And I need a break. Like last night I said, F that. I listed whatever I could during the day. I shut the blinds, closed the curtains, loaded up my cooler, sat by the pool for like 3 to 4 hours. I didn't go swimming because it was nice and cool yesterday. Today it's going to be humid, so I might actually go dip in the pool today. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I took a break, just sat there to collect my thoughts and, allow myself to breathe a little bit. Came back and just went for the gusto and started listing whatever cards I could until these 200 top loaders come. But now what's going to end up happening is it's going to force me to order 200 or 300 more ahead of time, which now puts me in a predicament because now if I'm not selling baseball cards, I'm going to be stuck with all this overhead. What do I do? That's what happened with these. The Card Saver ones. Nobody wants them. And I'm actually offering them at a discount and still nobody's pulling the trigger on them because nobody wants them. The only time people buy them is when they're submitting cards to the grading companies. So, I don't want that to happen where I order stuff and it just sits there. I use that same philosophy when it comes to my personal life, for example. Like, I've been going out every day. First off, it saves me on gas. I'll walk to Walmart. I'll get a couple bags of groceries here. Like even this morning, I went out to go get more of my sugar-free Gatorades like I always get. I'll go out and get things little by little, and I'll buy things that I actually use, with the exception of cleaning supplies and things like that, laundry detergent, et cetera, et cetera. When it comes to food items, I try to buy food that's not going to be sitting in my refrigerator going bad. I try to wait until my refrigerator is almost completely empty before I go out and start food shopping again. Because for me, nothing goes to waste. I've talked a bit about this on the channel, with all the hardships I've gone through in my life. I appreciate even the smallest little morsel these days, and I don't want nothing going to waste. So I put that philosophy into my sports card sales as well. Though I do have a bit of ambition and drive because I do want to make money, of course. I mean, again, I'm not out to make $1,000, $2,000, whatever it is. As long as I can supplement my income and, buy food and all that kind of stuff and let the hobby kind of like, pay for itself as well. I try to be very careful with the money I spend these days. You got to make good decisions, especially now with the economy going up and down like the way it is, and the uncertainty of what's going on, especially with Trump's tariffs and all that. You don't know what's going to happen coming down the road. But, I try to be a little bit more cautious. And in some cases, yeah, I do order in bulk when it comes to shipping supplies and what have you. But I don't want to have so much stuff that I can't get rid of it, or it's not going to be utilized because nobody's buying cards. Up until this point, I've done pretty good. And again, I have a couple of loyal customers that buy 10, 20, 30, sometimes even 40 cards at a time and cleans me out, which is a good thing. But then I'll have cards sit there for weeks and weeks and weeks and nobody will touch them. I've got cards that have been sitting there for almost 3 months over at my eBay store that nobody's touching. That's just the simple fact of supply and demand. And, if anybody actually wants these particular players. It's a lot of factors that go into it. And I realize that, So I have to be very careful with what I do. I just don't want to throw away my money, which is the whole point. Is I have to put money into it to get something out of it. You know what I mean? I don't want to take one step forward and then end up going 3 steps backwards. That's not how I want things to work. But, you know, there are periods where I'll sell tons of cards and then all of a sudden I sell nothing. That's just the nature of the beast, you know, and I've seen that happen a whole bunch here. You know, not just on YouTube, but on eBay. So, you know, I'm very careful with what I do. And having to deal with the stresses of all of the everyday things that I have to deal with in life, you know, again, with my family and the death of my dad, what I had to go through with this ridiculous court nonsense, again, being acquitted, again, having my record cleared, again, being found innocent, again, having charges dropped. This is like the 3rd or 4th time that this has happened to me. So don't listen to talking heads out there who are quite simply beneath me, you know, because they're lowly and, you know, loathing and self-hating and self-deprecating, that, you know, they're beneath me. They are the dirt that's in the threads of my sneakers. I couldn't care less. You know, you come to the source. But with all that being said, you know, I got to keep pressing on and pressing on and pressing on and finding ways. You know, survival is the name of the game here. And you have to have a little bit of drive and ambition. And sometimes, like here, I had to force, you know, some listings last night by taking a look at what I had left as far as top loaders are concerned and start swapping out cards to put and prioritize certain cards. This morning before I went out, I did this. I actually reorganized my new sales box. These are yet to be listed, but of course I have no top loaders for these. There's got to be a couple hundred cards in there ready to go. And I have another box I still have to sort through that's right there underneath my desk. So there's plenty of supply as far as sports cards are concerned. It's just I need the other stuff. It's a machine that needs to be constantly maintained. And when one gear goes off the rails or skips a beat, it's like a vinyl record. When it starts scratching and skipping, you know, it can make the song awful. And that's not what I want to have happen. You know, so it's just part of the game, folks. You know, I've had 1 or 2 idiots, you know, come on the channel here, which I've blocked, you know, trying to say, well, you had all this money and that and that. Well, I put a lot of money into this. Now it's time to try to get something out of it. That's the point of having a business. A lot of it is called risk. Risk is part of the game. With anything in life, you have to take a fucking chance. And I took a chance with this. With my old man's photo sitting there with the icon from his coffin, he was so proud of me. He told me before he died, he's like, son, good for you. Because I don't want to be on EBT. I don't want to be part of that fucking handout system. I want to be completely self-sufficient. Minus the nature of the income that I already get, because that's already been appointed by the courts years ago. What matters is what's in the record, not what people fucking talk about. You know, everything I have was appointed by the courts, period. That's set in stone for the rest of my life. You know, and as long as I'm doing things within certain boundaries, you know, that I'm allowed to do within, you know, the health issues I have or with the limitations of the health issues that I have, I'm perfectly fine doing what I'm doing. You know, and even with that, I have to be careful too, because, you know, I got to watch, because sometimes, like, you know, I talk about the fact that sometimes I suffer with depression and insomnia and all that kind of thing. I'm not going to pretend and lie. You know, I can see at least I'm getting a little bit healthier. I'm getting some meat back on my face. But, you know, there have been times I've shot video here on the channel, and I look like I'm drawn out and strung out. You know, especially with everything that's happening with the fallout of my dad's death. That's a lot of stress when you have outside forces coming at you and depending on you and looking up to you and all this other kind of stuff. It gets difficult, you know, to try to make everybody happy and to satisfy everybody. You know, I'm only one guy. When it comes here to YouTube, and that was something, again, Sports Card Radio was quick to point out, when it comes to guys like Jeff Wilson and what have you. That's why I love, like, Junk Wax Hero and, you know, small-time YouTube content creators like that. Not people trying to be bigger than what they are, turning this fucking hobby into a talk show like Jeff Wilson does, with a fucking staff and studio and all that kind of stuff. Simple works. I do all the editing. I do the recording for the YouTube content. You know, I buy everything out of my own pocket when it comes to review stuff. Here, like I wanted to do the Gina Carano thing. You know, that'll come somewhere down the line. But that's definitely in the backlog with other stuff that I've got that I haven't reviewed here on the channel. I haven't even talked about this. The Color Rush Eli Manning jersey. That was another jersey I wanted to talk about because the Giants kicked ass in the preseason. I don't want to get too happy just yet because, The Giants have been kind of meh the past couple seasons, but I think you all know what I'm saying with all of this stuff. To kind of wrap this up into a little bow, because I don't want this being a 30-minute tirade. You know, you kind of have to roll with the punches a little bit, but, you know, when you're trying to really do something with yourself and you're really trying to set the bar high for yourself, you know, you put expectations on yourself. And there are going to be roadblocks and potholes in a way, and, you know, it's how you handle that is what, you know, can make or break you, you know. I mean, right now, like I said, I'm bombarded with all of this stuff coming from the outside because, once again, you know, I can't blame my father, but there is fallout from that, you know. And then what I had to deal with what this woman did to me and everything else, you know, it could be overwhelming at times. But when there are things that are out of my hands and out of my control, again, like with the post office, they are the middleman. They're the gatekeepers, and I haven't found another way to get around them. FedEx sucks. UPS is too expensive. What do? Do I find a third-party shipper outside of all of that? I mean, it's just irritating and frustrating. I mean, look how long it took me to get these, for example. It's like, geez, even the tamper-proof labels I had ordered weeks and weeks ago. I talked about this on the channel. Look at how long it took for these to come, so I had to order these. And then they finally came, and the seller refunded me for these. It's like, geez, man, you know? At least the things that I can control, I can take care of on my own, like shipping tape. I bought like 4 rolls of shipping tape from Walmart, and I got plenty of Scotch tape. I got like 8 or 10 rolls of Scotch tape. That staples, I got plenty of staples. At least I got that kind of stuff. Magic markers, pens, all that stuff I got plenty of. You know, because that stuff I do use for other stuff, you know, like that's stuff that I don't mind having in bulk. It's just when it comes to the sports card thing, I don't want to have too much overhead, because if I don't sell anything, I'm going to be stuck, and that's money wasted. And I don't even know if I can resell that stuff. And that's another topic for another day. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your weekend, enjoy your Saturday. I'm going to have myself a little bit of breakfast. Definitely need one of them sugar-free Gatorades right there, maybe even a sugar-free Red Bull. God bless. Take care. I am your host, the Carolina Collector. I will see you all very soon.